Hi everyone, I'm Tally, this is Farrell and we're bored of it, and welcome to our buyer's guide for the Wingspan series of games, which includes Wingspan, Wyrmspan and Finspan. Maybe you're new to the world of Wingspan and you're wondering which game you should start with because you're a bit confused about it all. Maybe you already own one or two of the games and you're thinking about whether the other ones in the series are worth your time. Then we've got you covered.
Yep. So please note that in this video, it will be timestamped, so you can jump to whatever section is relevant for you, knowing the differences, learning about the games. It's all there to jump around. And also as a disclosure, just note that we bought the base game of Wingspan ourselves, but we were provided Wyrmspan and Finspan as review copies from the publisher. And also that there is a lot of expansion content for Wingspan, and we're not going to get into that. We actually have a buyer's guide just for Wingspan that covers all of that expansion content. So we recommend you go and watch that video. We're just going to be talking about the base games in this video. And one very final thing before we get into all of these games. Currently, YouTube has changed their algorithm and it's hurting a lot of channels. We've seen a lot of talk about this and we're experiencing it, where essentially videos aren't being pushed to anyone. So as you could say a standard, our video might be pushed to all of our subscribers when it's released. Now, across the first week, only a third of our subscribers might see it. So please, if you're a regular viewer, consider clicking the notify, the bell icon, and being notified when videos come out, because a lot of channels are having their videos be dead on arrival, and it's a constant problem at the moment. Thanks for your help, and let's get into it. Wingspan is a board game published in 2019 by publisher Stonemaier Games. It was designed by Elizabeth Hargrave with art from Ana Maria Martinez Jaramillo, Natalia Rojas, Greg May, and Beth Sobel. It was themed, or is themed, around attracting North American birds to a wildlife reserve, and its core gameplay components are tableau and engine building. It became an instant success for many reasons. It's a very accessible gameplay, it's vibrant artwork, and the things such as its wonderful components. You know, it has this dice tower shaped like a bird feeder, it has these wonderfully tactile little eggs. They all helped contribute to its success. Now, it's become so popular that it's even being featured on TV shows, and it also is currently ranked the 32nd best board game of all time on Board Game Geek.
Wingspan is played over 4 rounds with a diminishing number of actions available each round. There are 4 actions that you can take. You can play a bird card to your tableau, which will cost you resources and maybe eggs. And then the other 3 actions are all related to the rows on your tableau and allow you to gain food, lay eggs, or draw cards respectively. When you take one of the latter 3 actions, after the action, you'll move from right to left across the played birds within that row, activating any when activated powers, allowing you to chain together several actions within one turn. Most of the birds do have powers, and if they are not when activated, they could be that you get something when they are played on the tableau or when another player takes a certain action. Points come from a variety of sources, such as personal objectives, bird cards, and food and eggs cached on bird cards. There are also end of round goals for players to compete over, with points being awarded how well you do in relation to other players. To mark these end of round goals, you'll need to lose an action cube. Thus, the amount of actions is diminishing every round. However, as the game goes on, you'll build up your engine and you'll be taking more complex turns, so this balances out.
"2024 saw the surprise announcement of Wyrmspan, the second game in what had now become a series of Wingspan games. In this game, they swapped out the birds for fictional worms, e.g. dragons. If you're confused and think I'm talking about earthworms, as Tally did when I first told her about this game. This was designed by Connie Vogelman, with a development credit, of course, to Elizabeth Hargrave, and art by Clementine Campardu. This is a bit of a gamer's Wingspan. It has a couple of additional mechanisms. It's a bit more complex. It's kind of tighter and crunchier, and there's a bit more resource scarcity. So a lot to like if you're a bit more of a hardcore gamer.
First, there's the obvious change from birds to dragons, but the cards work in the same way, i.e. to play them, you have to pay resources and they provide bonuses. What's different about playing dragons is the introduction of a second type of card, cave cards. In order to play a dragon into your tableau, of which there are now 3 rows and 4 columns, there first must be a cave card, representing that you've excavated that spot in order to make room for the dragon. Cave cards also provide instant bonuses when they are played. Interestingly, there are now a variable number of actions per round. Players are given a set amount of coins which are spent to do actions, but it is possible to generate more, and it's also possible to reduce the number of actions you have in a round by having to spend your coins on dragon costs.
One of the bigger changes is to the actions. So in Wingspan, you had 4 actions, and 3 of which were associated with rows. So you took that action and then it kind of activated any when activated powers in that row. Now you don't have those actions anymore. What you have is a single action called Explore, where you'll move your Explorer meeple along a row, stopping at Explorer spaces. Some are pre-printed on the board, and kind of getting further down requires you to have dragon cards in that row, but you may also have Explorer spaces on dragon cards. So then you can kind of, much like in the same way as Wingspan, build up your row of actions and kind of have that engine building element. What's interesting about this system is that although each row is associated with the type of resource, again, like Wingspan, you have your food, your cave cards, and your dragon cards, rows, what happens is that the more you go to one row within a round, the more expensive it gets. So this means that there is a push to be more efficient in your actions, and you can't just hammer your one row where you've built up maybe a good points generating system.
There's also the addition of the Dragon Guild, which is a track players will move around, gaining a resource at each step, and it also provides VP or superior bonuses at the mid and end points. There are no objective cards in Wyrmspan, but there is still end of round goals with an improved scoring system. Although quite similar in design, all of these tweaks make Wyrmspan a little tighter, give it a little bit more depth, and certainly a distinct game flow to Wingspan.
A little less of a surprise, Finspan arrived in 2025 and is the 3rd game in the Wingspan series with a focus on fish and marine life. Designed by David Gordon and Michael O'Connell, with, of course, a developer credit to Elizabeth Hargrave. This has art from Ana Maria Martinez Jaramillo and Mesa Schumacher. This represents a streamlining of the Wingspan system, refining. There is a tighter economy, there is a tighter focus, and as such, it is actually the most approachable of the 3 games and the most family friendly, even more so than Wingspan.
Finspan is the lightest game of the 3, as it streamlines many of the mechanisms from the previous 2. Here, there are only 2 actions, play a card or dive. Play a card is pretty self-explanatory, and dive is very similar to explore from Wyrmspan, where you'll choose a column and your diver will move down the column, collecting bonuses depending on which regions you've placed your fish cards in, and activating any when activated bonuses from fish cards as the diver passes over them.
Now there are only 3 resources to play around with, cards, young, and eggs. And what's quite interesting is any fish card you play might ask for one or multiple of these different units. So it creates quite a nice decision space, because on their own, eggs and young are worth points, and obviously cards you want to play. So if you're sacrificing any of those, you're kind of giving up something fairly important for gameplay. So there's a lot of just interesting decisions on what to sacrifice. But this also brings what I will term a mini game, for lack of a better word, because what you're kind of trying to do on the resources you don't spend are hatch eggs into young and then move young around, so you have 3 on one fish, and then they turn into schools, and schools kind of double their points values. So you kind of have this spatial puzzle as well.
It's also a nicer game than its predecessors, as at the end of each round you score the objectives based on how well you do against them rather than how well you do versus the other players. Also, many of the fish cards that you play, when they have the when activated bonus, the other players also get to claim the bonus, which is pretty nice. Honestly, there's not too much more to say other than that, as it's a pretty condensed game of playing cards, boosting your actions and meeting objectives, which polishes the Wingspan system to a shine.
In this section, we're just going to talk about what we think, and like a bit of a buyer's guide, what order you should buy them in, should you get all of them, that kind of thing. And I think just to start, I think we'd both agree our favorite is Wyrmspan.
Yes.
And this is, I think, just because, as we kind of alluded to throughout the rest of the review, that Wyrmspan is more of the gamer's Wingspan. And we just like that extra crunch. I don't know, what do you like?
Yeah, exactly. Just a little bit more thinky, maybe a little bit more to consider. I do really love Wingspan though. Maybe it's just holding a little bit more of nostalgia factor. But gameplay wise, then Wyrmspan is the one that we prefer. Maybe Wingspan gets a little bit more airtime, let's say, with friends. So that's also something to consider because it is that little bit lighter. But if it's just me and you, then we're gonna opt for Wyrmspan, with I think Finspan being the least favourite. But that's not to say it's a bad game at all. Really, really enjoyed playing it. But just out of the 3, I think it would be the one that I would least opt for.
Yeah, I completely agree. Finspan's a bit of a weird one because it's come out, and actually a lot of people have said it's their favourite Wingspan game. And I think there's something in that it has this tighter focus. It's a very clean game, as we said. There's very few resources. It's like this very self-contained economy. It's stripped out a lot of the more, you could say almost competitive elements, but like crunchy elements. It's just very, very polished and streamlined. So I can see why people like that. You absolutely hate the theme.
I'm very scared of eels. Struggle to even say the word. So that is, definitely a negative for me. There have been instances where I've flipped over a fish card and it's been one of those things. And I have screamed.
You've screamed multiple times playing Finspan,
Some of the fish are very beautiful though, and I like to look at them. But that element for me is a bit tough.
So in terms of, so I guess first question, do you think that you would need to have them all? Do you think that you can have 2 and not the other? Like, how would you play it?
Yeah, actually. I think if you started with Finspan, you would in a way want to like work your way up and maybe have all 3. But I feel like if you have these 2, I think do different enough things for us that we're going to have this in our collection as well, but these 2, I think, are distinct enough to have both. Whereas if you start over here, this is lighter and easier. So do you really want to like go backwards is a bit the wrong word.
But I agree. I think that I think one of the things as well is that I agree that I think particularly Wingspan and Wyrmspan do different things in terms of their mechanisms. I think this is very approachable and you can play with anyone and everyone enjoys it, like generally. That's a bit more, gamery. So there's something in both of them, and they kind of, the actions are like different and the powers are different and the resources, but the way Wyrmspan is, its kind of action system is basically the same as Finspan.
Yeah.
So then I think there's also that, whereas like these two feel different, whereas I think Wyrmspan and Finspan feel very similar in terms of like the core action system. So then, yeah, it's like, is it a bit much to have both of them?
Yeah.
But I agree with what you said, that I think you might work your way up, but you wouldn't work your way down.
Yeah.
And also I think one thing is that with Wingspan, there's such a wealth of extra content. All the expansions, you know, you have the Oceania expansion, which kind of addresses some gameplay concerns from the base game. You have the Asia game, which can be standalone 2-player game. You have all the other kind of, you know, the European expansion, which is more cards and objectives and such. So there's kind of like a lot of content, as you can see from this box.
I think if you, like you said, really, really don't like, I mean, these are like barely competitive. Some like light elements of interaction, like how you can take cards from a central marketplace, for instance. But if you really don't like any of that, then Finspan probably is your best bet, because there really is nothing that you can do to greet other players. So if that's more your cup of tea, then yeah, Finspan would be best.
Yeah, I think so. Moving to, if you don't have any of them and you're looking to get one, I would say definitely start. I'll say for probably the average person, I would say start with either Finspan or Wingspan. Probably just whatever takes your fancy a bit more. Because I mean, although we like Finspan the least, it is a very kind of polished and clean game. So I think there's not too much in these two. So I'd say whatever sounds better to you. If you're more of a gamer, and you're only one, then I would say Wyrmspan. I think it has a little bit of edge to it that like more hardcore gamers will enjoy. But you can't really go wrong with any of them.
No.
But yeah, I would say start with one of these two and then move up. But I wouldn't necessarily say if you start with one of these, you'd have to go to the other one.
No, I agree.
Yeah. So any final thoughts on the trilogy?
Really, yeah, we really like it, as we've mentioned. Now that we have all three, I think they hold kind of different places in the collection, like we just alluded to, for different occasions, different groups maybe. So yeah, love the kind of core systems that it brings. It's always very, I think, like soothing to play these games.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe just because it's something we've played a lot now, but just, I don't know, the way that you do it and the way that you build up the engines and then get bigger and bigger turns, it's just something quite satisfying, but it's just not something too aggressive, or if you just want to kind of focus a little bit more on your own, you know, tableau and building that, I just find them quite soothing to play. Always calms me when I play any of them. Yeah. Apart from the eels.
Surprised you keep saying it.
It's really, I'm actually sweating.
Yeah. So that is our buyer's guide for the Wingspan series. If you have any questions, please ask us. We're happy to answer any about any of the games. Feel free to check out our Wingspan and buyer's guide to learn more about all those expansions. There's a lot of content for Wingspan. And we really appreciate you watching. And as we said at the beginning of the video, please, if you're a regular viewer, click the bell icon to be notified when our videos come out, as currently YouTube is kind of killing the algorithm and it's a bad time for a lot of channels. We would appreciate it. But thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.